Judge Suzanne Goddard QC said Reynhard Sinaga was an evil serial sexual predator who has preyed upon young men who wanted nothing more than a good night out with their friends. In my judgment, you are a highly dangerous, cunning and deceitful individual who will never be safe to be released.
He preyed on the young, the drunk, the vulnerable, targeting central Manchester at night from the shadows. After a 2-year police investigation and a suspected 190 victims, 190 victims, 190 victims.
As of this date, police expect it to be more, at 206. This is the story of Reynhard Sinaga. Manchester is a thriving city in the northwest of the UK. Known for its live music, many world famous bands have come from here, including the Stone Roses, the Smiths, Joy Division, New Order, and so on. It is well known for its nightlife and clubs, and is often rated as one of the friendliest cities in the UK. It was, however, a temporary home for one of the most prolific serial rapists that the UK has ever seen. This man was called Reynhard Sinaga. He got convicted of 159 sexual offences, although he targeted 206 victims as far as the police know. 60 of them have been unidentified. Reading into this story, it made me sick to my stomach, knowing how many people have been affected by this sick, evil individual. Reynhard Sinaga was born on the 19th of February 1983, born in the Indonesian city of Jambi. He grew up in Depok, Indonesia, and grew up in an affluent Catholic family. He completed a degree in architecture there, and then eventually in August of 2007 he moved to Manchester to complete a Masters of Science in Urban Planning.
Reynhard Tambos Maruli Tua Sinaga.
He lived in the heart of Manchester, close to Princess Street and the Gay Village. Princess Street is a very popular, very busy street with well-known clubs, bars and live venues. His attacks were thought to have started as early as 2005 before he entered the UK. However, the earliest case that got tried in the courts were based in 2015. This victim was at the Factory nightclub close to Reynhard's home. He was enjoying his night until him and his girlfriend got into an argument. He left the nightclub, and the next thing he knew, he woke up in Reynhard's apartment the next morning, covered in vomit. He woke up with Reynhard at the other side of the room. He actually apologised to Reynhard for his actions and immediately left, anxious, not remembering a thing of what happened or how he got there. Little did he know, he was sexually assaulted. This seemed to have happened with every one of Reynhard's victims barring one. No one remembers the night. This is because Reynhard would always offer the men a drink. Little did these men know, this drink always contained GHB, a powerful drug that is a CNS, a central nervous system depressant. GHB are just often referred to as the club drug or the date rape drug. It comes in clear liquid form or powdered form and is often mixed with a drink, making it hard to tell from an outsider that the drink has been contaminated with the drug. Users of this report that they can get feelings of euphoria, increased sex drive, a sense of tranquility. However, high doses and side effects include loss of consciousness, nausea, hallucinations, amnesia, seizures, severe respiratory depression, coma, and even death. The problem with this drug as well is that the measured amount that you need for it to be pleasurable or damaging is a very narrow and sensitive line. Vile people can abuse this drug to spike people's drink to make them unconscious, where they can rob, sexually assault, kidnap, or even do worse to their victim. GHB was also used by Stephen Port, a man who murdered 4 men between the space of June 2014 and September 2015. The men were given fatal overdoses of the drug. Hort was also convicted of raping and assaulting several living victims using GHB. This was just another among many accounts of the people abusing the power of GHB for their sick and twisted ways. People that knew Reynhard considered him to be chatty, happy, flamboyant guy with a charm to him. He had the nickname Posh Spice, with even Reynhard's victims describing him as a short, thin man who seemed unthreatening and even helpful at the time. Reynhard's victims were all straight men with the exception of 3 gay men, often young, with over 26 of them being students. They were often living in Manchester at the time as well. Most of these men didn't call the police for many varying reasons, with a big factor in not calling being that most victims felt like they did not have sufficient evidence because all victims had memory loss due to the GHB. A very small few did call the police about it, one including a young man who had no recollection of the night, but he knew something bad had happened, so he had called the police, where he described to them 2 hotels side by side where he thought the event occurred. However, the police could not find a man described at these hotels. This was because the event actually occurred in Reynhard's flat, close to the hotels. But again, due to bad memory loss and not knowing much about the city, the victim couldn't accurately describe where he was for the police to find the suspect. Therefore, the case wasn't solved until much time later. In order for me to tell the rest of this horrible story, I need to start at the end in order for the beginning and the middle to make more sense. It was on one night on June 2017. A young 18-year-old student was out with his friends in Factory nightclub on Princess Street, Manchester. The unknown victim was partying until the early hours of the morning. Sometime in the early hours, he lost his friends, so he went outside the club to ring them. He was an 18-year-old lost student in a city, and he was anxious that he lost his friends. Reynhard had spotted the young man and approached him. The two started chatting for 15 minutes, both chatting away about their student lives, when Reynhard offered him back to his, safe from the streets, so he could ring and find his friends. So that's what they did. They continued chatting all the way to his apartment. He thought he was a comforting guy who was trying to help him. When they arrived at the apartment, they chatted for a short 10 minutes when he got up to go to the bathroom. Upon arriving back in the living room, Reynhard offered him 2 shots that were already lined up on the table. The victim actually remembered the first shot tasting okay. However, he recalled the second shot being a lot more stronger. Next thing he knows is that he passed out. He wakes up with Reynhard on top of him. The teenager knew he was in danger and punched Reynhard several times before pushing him away and then throwing him to the ground. Reynhard was laying on the bathroom floor. The teenager ran out of the apartment and a short time had passed and he rung the police. This is a written text-to-speech of what the victim said in a 999 call.
Hello, I was out last night and then, some guy took me to his house that I didn't want to take me to. He wouldn't let me leave his house, and he ended up trying to rape me. I tried to push him away. I've got blood on me, because I tried to hit him to get away from me. He's trapped me in his house for most of the night. I've had to. I know it's violent, but I've had to hit him a few times just to stop him from attacking me, been on top of me. I've had to. I've got blood on my hand if you want to see. Cut. I think he might be busted, so if you have to, you might have to phone an ambulance, cause I've had to hit him a few times to get him away from me.
Just before 6 PM, the police arrived at his flat. They found a bloody, semi-conscious Reynhard lying on the bathroom floor. They actually arrested the teenager on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm with intent. They handcuffed him and confiscated his iPhone 4 off of him. Except, it wasn't his phone. The teenager had accidentally picked up one of Sinaga's phone instead of his own in a rush to get out of the apartment. Sinaga was caught on his apartment CCTV being escorted out by paramedics on a stretcher. The injuries were so bad that the nurses thought he was suffering from a bleed on the brain at first. When he came around the following day, he had the cheek to ask one of the nurses, "Have I been raped?" But Reynhard was far, far from being any victim in this case. This actually shows how psychopathic Reynhard actually is. To give you more details of how twisted he actually is, when the teenager originally woke up, shocked at what was happening, when he pushed him away, Sinaga actually responded by screaming, "Intruder! Help!" before repeatedly biting the teenager, which then caused the teenager to retaliate even further, having to defend himself. I'm going to be real for a second. This made my blood boil reading this. The manipulation tactics used and the way he tried to twist the situation into being a victim was just unbelievable to me. Police spoke to Reynhard in hospital very soon after the incident. Reynhard had asked the police several times with urgency in his voice for the police to bring him his phone. This raised suspicion. Eventually, they had found an iPhone 6 under his bed and went to hand it back to Sinaga, but not before they asked him for the PIN in order to give the phone back. Sinaga proceeded to give the policeman several wrong pins to his phone. Eventually, he gave the right one, and Reynhard immediately tried to snatch the phone off the police officer but failed. When the phone was unlocked, a video came up on the iPhone 6 of Reynhard sexually assaulting the teenager. At that moment, at 3:52 PM on June the 3rd, 2017, Sinaga was initially arrested on suspicion of a single count of rape. He was kept handcuffed to his hospital bed while under police guard. He was discharged and interviewed by detectives 2 days later. Over the period of this time, police searched his flat and found dozens of driving licenses, phones, student IDs, watches, wallets, all belonging to Sinaga's victims. In that time, police found 3 terabytes worth of video footage, both on the phone that the victim accidentally picked up and on the phone that was found underneath Reynhard's bed, of Reynhard abusing, sexually assaulting, and even worse, to his victims. This is how police eventually came to suspect a total of 206 people. It wasn't until his, quote, trophy evidence, unquote, and all the videos that it all came to light. The police had to go through all these videos on the phone and try and track down and find the victims in these videos. That's how the police identified 159 of them, with the rest of them being unidentifiable, urging the public to come forward if they think they were a victim or knew of any information. Police had to go up to 159 of these people and tell them what had happened to them. Again, an absolute majority of these people couldn't recall what had happened these nights due to the effects of the GHB, so this came to news as a vast majority of the victims. This next part comes with an extra warning. As if this case wasn't dark enough already, it gets darker. The next segment comes with more details of what happened on these nights. I was honestly thinking of not putting this part in, and to be honest, I've actually left a lot of details out. However, I did feel like it was important to add some details in order to give people the insight of how truly dark and twisted this scumbag really is. If you'd prefer to not listen to this part of the segment, you're more than welcome to skip to the next segment where I'll continue telling the rest of the story. One victim remembered his friends putting him in a taxi outside of a club. His next recollection was waking up in a strange apartment. When he had asked Sinaga what had happened, Sinaga described providing care and shelter after finding him laying in the street. Another teenager, a university student, managed to get Sinaga's mobile number as a precaution after waking up in his flat, having concerns that something might have happened or been stolen from him. When he rang to ask about more information about what had happened, Sinaga described himself as a good Samaritan who had apparently found him unconscious on the pavement. Another one was outside of a nightclub when his phone had died when trying to ring a taxi. Sinaga chatted to this man and said, "Would you like to come inside and charge your phone and have a quick chat?" Again, he offered a drink to the young man. The man told the court that soon after being offered a drink, he couldn't remember a single thing until the next morning. After waking up, confused and disorientated, he left within 5 minutes. Another victim woke up naked on Sinaga's floor, feeling sick and panic. He came to the conclusion that he'd been drugged, telling his fiancée about the suspicion of being drugged, but not about the condition he woke up in. Some victims felt incredibly unwell after regaining consciousness, sometimes naked and covered in vomit. Another man remembered waking up on the floor, covered in a blanket, before thanking Reynhard for letting him stay over. One video showed two men together laid side by side unconscious while he assaulted them. In some of these videos, men were often snoring while they were unconscious, some were vomiting, some were seen regaining consciousness at times, some were clearly disorientated while simultaneously trying to make attempts of pushing him away. However, Reynhard was seen pinning some men down when this was happening. One victim woke up and felt like his arms were paralyzed, and for the brief moment he was conscious, he could feel himself being assaulted. Honestly, reading this terrified me. I just couldn't imagine what these men were going through at the time. It really makes me question my faith in humanity and how someone can be so evil. The case was so big that police teamed up with St. Mary's Sexual Assault Referral Centre, where their crisis workers would accompany police on their visits to help offer immediate emotional and practical support for these victims. A large programme was put in place to provide ongoing support as well. One of the workers there, Lisa Waters, said, "What we didn't want to do was to drop the bombshell and then just disappear and leave with these men with no support." She continued, "Many of the men have chosen not to tell anybody else about what had happened to them. That might be because they might want to protect their own psychological health. It might be because they're ashamed to tell other people. It might be because they're fearful of other people's responses." The charity Safeline reported an increase in calls in its hotline for male sexual abuse survivors in the aftermath of the case. Duncan Craig, founder of Survivors Manchester, said this has started a national conversation among men opening up about sexual abuse. Sinaga ended up pleading not guilty to all the charges made against him. This meant that courts had to go through a lengthy process of charging him with all these crimes. Because he pleaded not guilty, that also meant that the courts had to go through all the video footage that was found on these phones, which was to be displayed for the court, jury, and victims present. Sinaga argued that he was simply playing sex games with the men playing dead to fulfill his fantasies, and that it was all consensual. The judge was very quick in finding this false and dismissed this claim, as the victims were heard snoring in the videos. 4 separate trials were held over the space of June 2018 to December 2019. Across the 4 trials, Reynhard was found guilty of 136 counts of rape, 8 counts of attempted rape, 14 counts of sexual assault, and 1 count of assault by penetration against a total of 48 victims. Again, police believe that there were 206 victims, 60 of which still haven't been found or traced.
In the week since Sinaga was sentenced, ITV News has discovered Safeline and National Male Survivors Helpline both had a 500% increase in calls. Survivors Manchester saw a 300% increase, while Survivors Trust received 5 times more calls than normal. And Survivors UK says referrals from other organisations shot up by 400%.
Sinaga was originally held in HM Prison's Strangeways and was reported as refusing to cooperate with investigators. He moved to HM Prison Wakefield in April 2020, also known as Monsters Mansion, where some of the UK's most prolific murderers and predators are held. Sinaga's father, Sabun Sinaga, in an interview with BBC Indonesia, said he had got what he deserved and that we accept the verdict. His punishment fits his crimes. I don't want to discuss this case any further. Priti Patel, a Conservative MP for Witham and at the time Home Secretary, She said she was deeply concerned by the use of such a drug such as GHB, and that she had, quote, asked an independent counsel to prioritise a review into whether controls for the drugs like GHB were tough enough. This case, in a lot of ways, has changed the UK and somewhat across the world. It got men talking about sexual abuse more. It got political conversation about the legal use of GHB. It opened people's perception of that polite stranger offering you a drink at the bar. It made you think, was there more intentions to than just buying you a drink? This struck the hearts of many people that read the newspaper or watched the news. And the most disturbing change of all, it changed the lives of over 206 people. And that is the story of Reynhard Sinaga. The reason why I actually chose this story was because it's actually close to home. It's close to where I was from. And as a result, I know a fair few people that actually have encountered or passed by or know of him, because he used to hang around the village a lot. Something that I've noticed is that not a lot of people say that he used to hang around in the village. In fact, they used to say that he used to prowl the streets of Princess Street, which is true. That is definitely true. But yeah, apparently, as far as my local knowledge goes, I know of a few people that have seen him a fair few times. I just find that terrifying, to be honest. I also picked it because I felt it was important to tell, because this case is, because it's not even my opinion of whether this is one of the worst cases of sexual assault. It's factually one of the worst cases of sexual assault. Everything from the media, the police, suggests that this is one of the most prolific. It's just truly awful to even grasp, really. Reading this, I obviously thought he was disturbed, no doubt about that. But as I kept on reading it and hearing more and more stories, I actually realised he was even way more manipulative than I'll give him credit for, than I originally thought. I knew he was evil, I knew he was sadistic, but the manipulation tactics and techniques that I've heard him use is just insane. You know, the whole, when he got caught on the final dude, the fact that he tried to scream intruder and everything like that is just, it angered me so much. I was like, this guy, and obviously the victim got arrested at first, and I understand the police have to do what they have to do, but at the same time, I can understand why victims don't come forward, as awful as that sounds. Like, they have to go through this, some of them have to go through this process, and it's so sad. Like, it is so sad. It must just have been so strenuous for him, for this teenager. And it also must have been strenuous for all the victims that came forward and had to face him in court. And honestly, power freaking to him, man. 'Cause if it weren't for these people, he would have got caught. Huge, huge respects. One twisted thing that I actually didn't say was how he used to brag to his friends. Apparently, there's WhatsApp groups and news articles of where you can see messages of what he used to send to his WhatsApp group full of friends and stuff. And again, his friends thought he was a chill guy and everything like that. And on one of the group chats, he was seen bragging on New Year's Eve on one of the incidents, how he pulled another straight guy, and how his friends were just in on it, like, oh, you're always getting the straight guys, what's your secret and all this, having a laugh, thinking that they're just his mate and stuff, when really there was a lot more sinister behind that. And he carried on the conversations a few times like this, of where he would kind of basically just brag, like outright brag about these incidents, and one in particular really stood out for me was when he said something along the lines of, let me just get it up here. He was bragging about one of his one night stands, which obviously it freaking wasn't. It was a hell of a lot more sadistic. And yeah, but he used to brag into his like friends WhatsApp group. And one incident, one of his friends actually said one night, like, fucking hell, darling, you get a different straight every week. To which Sinaga actually said, it's black magic. Manchester is a magical city. And then one of his friends actually said, like, black magic, yeah. Ray makes a drink potion of gay love. Haha. And another friend actually responded saying, I want the formula. And Sinaga actually said, he actually responded by saying, take a sip of my secret poison, I'll make you fall in love. Which is actually a Little Mix, the pop band Little Mix. It's a reference to Little Mix. And he then continued and said, one drop should be enough. And Oh my god, I cannot explain how much reading this made me so freaking frustrated, because he's like out there just bragging about it, you know? It's insane to me. It's actually insane how he was just so open with it, and so he didn't think he was going to get caught. And I can see why. If it was 206 victims, then I can understand. Like, it took him that long. Like, I can imagine his confidence, quote, air quote, his confidence growing and growing, and I can imagine him getting more power hungry and all this. And oh god, the man is vile. But yeah, I'd actually like to end this on a positive note. I feel like, as the charities have mentioned, the police have mentioned, a lot of men have started to speak out and speak up about this subject matter, and I think that's, as dark as the subject is, I do feel it's important, and I feel like that is a good thing that this stigmatization has actually gone down as a result. It was a sad way of it having to get to that point for in order for men to talk about it. However, there is some amazing charities out there that have done some amazing work. You know, I'm gonna list some of these phone numbers in my bio. If you've been affected by any of these subject matters, or if you've been a victim of sexual assault, sexual abuse, or anything along the lines, then please give these charities a call. They are there to help you. They are there to talk. You can be anonymous, or you don't have to be, whatever's comfortable for you. It's literally their job, their work is to help you. And there's some amazing charities out there. But yeah, thank you for watching, guys. It's time for me to go. Take care and stay safe.